Hello, good evening to you, and thank you for tuning into Spotlight. Every now and again, something happens that forces us to take a step back and look for holistic solutions to problems. 2 days ago, a video emerged of who has now been described as the chaplain and lawyer of St. Monica's Teacher Training College in Mampong. In the video, you see him kissing some female students, about 3 of them. One of them tries to resist. He still goes ahead to kiss her. This video has generated a lot of conversation. The chaplain in question has presently been asked to step aside by management of the school. But is that enough? And what happens next? Today we are asking questions here about the sexual harassment policies we have in educational institutions. Are they addressing the problems they are meant to address? And what happens in situations such as these? We're going to go for a quick break, and then when we come back, I'll be playing that video for you to appreciate the context, and then we'll have our discussion. My name is Nwang Falong. Do stay with us.
Opinions are like onions. Everybody has one.
Abortion is a no-no. As a human being, you must take responsibility for all your actions and inactions. Your misjudgment shouldn't be enough grounds to take a life.
No. I disagree with you because look, if you do not legalize it, people will go to quack doctors anyway who might end up not just kill the baby, but the mother as well.
Why should I waste my time, join a long queue under the hot sun to vote for a political party, knowing very well that nothing would be achieved at the end of the day?
Something will be achieved. It's your civic responsibility to turn out to vote. Vote and vote for a good leader.
Governments need to cater to every graduate, diversify the economy, invest in other sectors.
But the government cannot do it all. That is why we need the youth to take up the mantle and set up their own businesses. That is how we will create economic viability.
Here on Opposing Views, we take your views, my views, and the views of the experts and put them in the right context for you, our discerning viewers.
Welcome back to Spotlight on MX24 television. Before we went on that break, I mentioned a viral video of what is best described as abuse of some female students at St. Monica's Training College in Mampong. We're going to be playing that video shortly, but before that, for this discussion, we are joined by Bashiratu Kamal Muslim, who's a gender advocate. We're joined by Dr. Reina Kumperegia. He is a private legal practitioner. Divine Pay, a research fellow at the Africa Education Watch. Also Christian Mam Hesse, who is also a private legal practitioner, and former gender minister under the NDC, Nana Oye Bampo Ado. Let's take a look at that video, and then we'll come back to the discussion. Okay, welcome back from that. When you look at the video, you're able to see clearly what is going on in there and appreciate it better for yourself. There have been varying commentary on this particular video. One thing, however, is certain is the general outrage about the contents of that video. The man in the video in priestly robes has been identified as the chaplain. Now we can say former chaplain because he's been relieved of his duties, and lawyer of St. Monica's Teacher Training College. It's a female school. In the video you see him, we are not sure exactly what the occasion is, but he's clearly kissing female students uncomfortably while some other students watch on. One of those students took that video and posted it, and the video has, gone viral since then. The management of the school has come under a lot of heat since that video was released to the public. Yesterday, after a long meeting, they relieved the chaplain of his duties, and the situation is still being investigated. There was a release by the Anglican Church the moment that video became viral. We have that release also. We'll just take that release. We'll also take some social media reactions that followed that video. We'll just play that right now. My producers are just going to quickly pull up that video. Yes, this is the reaction from the Anglican Church. You see, they clearly condemn it. They assure Ghanaians of their full cooperation and investigation into the matter, and to bring appropriate sanctions against whoever is found culpable. There have also been some interesting reactions on social media from different people. Here we see religion, which is supposed to foster unity amongst humanity, is otherwise being used now as a tool for harassing our young, innocent girls. So Ghana is gradually falling apart along with this sad path, or make I pass, Reverend Father. Okay, some slight local slang there. I am so disgusted and grossed out. That's what this comment is saying. Also, what if the Reverend Father has COVID? Very, very appropriate question. We also see from Lydia Forson, I've seen the circulating video of the Anglican priest and the students, and the comments from some people. Wow. When it comes to anything involving a men of God, the conversations are always nauseating. I think this is in reaction to some people who have been defending the actions of the Anglican priest. There are other questions and other comments on the video still. We're just going through some of them. Okay, now those were some comments that were taken from social media randomly on people's views about what the video you just watched. We're going to be joined for this conversation by Bashiratu Kamal Muslim. She's a gender advocate. Dr. Reina Kumperigi, a private legal practitioner. You'll be answering some questions concerning the legalities, which we do not have much information about. Also, Christian Mamhesi, he's also a private legal practitioner. He'll also be speaking to the legal aspect of all of this. There's also Divine Pay, who's a research fellow at the Africa Education Watch. They have presently raised a petition to a few institutions to deal appropriately with the situation. We'll also be joined by Nana Oyebampo Addo, former gender minister under the NDC, to give us her angle to this video. Is Nana Oyebampo with us yet? Let me just quickly go to Bashiratu Kamal Muslim. She's here with us. We're having issues with the line for Nana Oyebampo, but she'll join us right back. Bash, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
And to my co-panelists.
Yes, let me ask you an interesting question. Here is a lot of people have weighed in on this from the angle. First, some believe that the ladies who were in the hall and watching should have reacted differently. Some even go as far as blaming them, for standing by and allowing it to happen. Can we apportion any blame to these young women who witnessed this?
No. I think basically what people need to understand is that issues around sexual harassment and gender-based violence is always around issues of power, unequal power relations. And this is a man who is in a position of power. And if you read some of the comments that are coming from some of the students regarding the video and past students, you'd notice that the first girl who allegedly, who was kissed, was allegedly a chaplain, and she was removed by the same man. And the man was awarding her because he felt that after removing her, she still did her best to pass an exam or whatever test she was given. That is why she was being awarded. So because sexual harassment is an issue of power, it's mostly difficult for people to come out openly to, at the first point, refuse. The third lady was trying to do that, but in the end, she had to give in. Only God knows what was going through her mind when she was trying to resist the attempt. And a lot of things have been normalized in our society to an extent that we refuse to see anything wrong with the quote, "Touch not my anointed." So who dare you to even go to say that I will not agree? It's like, what would Father Nimasi, you know, and all of that. And also about an issue of, well, the fact that people are even tagging it as a holy kiss in itself is very problematic. It's a problematic narrative because they are now linking it to a religious something in the holy book, which is also not acceptable. So when sexual harassment happens, it takes a lot of strength, a lot of courage, a lot of perseverance, a lot of determination for any victim to be able to come out to talk about it or to even refuse it in the first attempt.
Thank you, Bash. Let me quickly go to Nanaoye Bampoado, who's joined us again. Hello, madam, and thank you for joining us on Spotlight. Nanaoye, can you hear me? Hello. Okay, we have Nanaoye Bampoado on phone. She's a former gender minister and former gender and children minister under the NDC. Is she still on the line? Yes, madam. When you look at the video, the chaplain in question has presently been relieved of his duties. Some people think that this is enough. Should this be enough to end the situation?
This is a very serious event. This is a very serious thing that happened. I mean, we need to take it very seriously. This is a person who has been placed in a position of trust. He's been placed in a position of trust. He's a religious leader placed in an educational institution with certain responsibilities. And we have certain expectations of him. In the era of COVID, with his training as a lawyer, training as a teacher, as a leader, and as a religious person, with impunity, he is able to stand in the pulpit during the course of a sacred religious activity to actually throw caution to the wind and take advantage and actually do that, kissing three girls. And if you watch the video carefully, watch the reaction of the third girl. It was obvious that she did not want it. He forced her and even kissed her. Look at how he grabbed her shoulders, put his hand around, and look at some other posts that we have read from some of the students. He ought to be prosecuted. He ought to be prosecuted. And there should be a full-scale investigation because it is obvious that this is not the first time. And he is obviously a predator, is obviously a pedophile. And this should be investigated.
Madam, beyond the school, should we leave St. Monica's College to investigate and institute the appropriate punishment? Or should other institutions get involved?
He should be handed over to the police, the domestic violence and victim support. And my concern is that what action did St. Monica's take? Because, I mean, when you look at the video, you realize that this is not the first time he's doing this. And we've had reports I have read about 2 other reports from students who are saying that even when he's preaching, he uses profane language and stresses on certain things, and that if he wants to be a mass server or something, then he told somebody to sit on his lap and all that. So it is obvious that there have been instances. So the education service, because that they have supervisory oversight, they need to conduct a full-scale investigation. And beyond that, we should have some regulations on the issue of sexual harassment, and then even creating mechanisms so that the girls can report. There should be some degree of anonymity so that if something like that has happened before, there should be a channel and a mechanism for them to be able to report. Obviously, there were no such channels. And that is why he can, with impunity, stand in the pulpit with hundreds of students and whoever, and actually do what he's doing. There's obviously a problem. And I believe that all the institutions, educational institutions, should review and have a look at some of these mechanisms to protect the girls. Because if you have a teacher in a position of authority, then the girl is vulnerable. Who is she going to report to? Because if she reports, she's going to be punished. And you read that in some of the narratives that have been posted on social media, that they were afraid and that they felt that they would be punished if they actually reported. And so beyond that was my recommendation. One, he should be handed over to the police. He should be arrested and investigated and prosecuted if investigations find out that he is culpable. Number two, the Ghana Education Service should launch an investigation. And beyond that, create mechanisms to protect not only female and male students. Create mechanisms to protect them, because obviously there's a problem.
What about from the parental angle? Do the parents of these students have a case?
A case in terms of what, please?
Can they bring any charges against the school, against the chaplain?
Oh yes, they can, because if you place your ward in a school, I mean, they have a duty of care. They have a responsibility to make sure that your child is protected and all that. And because you have paid school fees, you want the child to be trained and to come up with some qualifications. And rather, that child is sexually abused in such a humiliating manner in public. Why is St. Monitor's how can that priest and that person do, how is it that he's able to do this in public? We should ask ourselves. So for me, I'm looking at the impunity. How is it that he can do this in public? Because maybe he knows that he will not be punished, and maybe it's something that occurs, or I'm just trying to make some assumptions. But I mean, we need to look at this and look at what is happening in other colleges and other schools. Why is it that the girls could not say no? Why is it that all the three of them, he called them and then they went forward to be kissed? Why couldn't they say no? So for me, these are the niggling, these are the very worrying, I was traumatized, actually. Why is it that the girls couldn't say no? There must be something happening in that school.
Madam, let me just find out.
How many other girls have been sexually abused?
Talking about why the girls couldn't say no, I don't know if you've seen the commentary that seeks to say that some of the girls did enjoy it. Does this look like something that should have been approached differently?
In terms of should have been approached by who differently?
The students. The students, especially in the background, were jubilating. Some commentary has tried to explain that they seemed to enjoy what was going on.
I don't think so. I can't speak for them, but I don't think it's just perhaps a shock. Sometimes it's not jubilating, but it's like shrieking in shock or something. Or something, But I cannot. I would not know. But this is what I would. Assume, and it has nothing to do with the spectators. It's that everything to do with the victims, the girls who are in a vulnerable position and situation, because that is a teacher, that is a superior, and they are in a vulnerable position because they cannot refuse because of the repercussions. And why is it that there's no mechanism in the school to put? Why would this man, this teacher or whoever have the impunity to be able to do that?
Impunity.
And then you come up and say that you have sacked him. No. It should go beyond that. It should be prosecuted. It's a criminal offense. It's sexual abuse. And it's an offense. We have criminal offenses, and it is an offense, a statutory offense. And so he has to be handed over for investigation and prosecution.
Right. Madam, please hold on for me.
Has to report to the police for the police to investigate.
Right.
We are insisting on that. Are they accomplices? Are they trying to protect?
Okay.
Do they not see that this is serious?
Okay. I'll come back to you in a moment. Please hold on for us. I'm just going to engage. We have another lawyer on the line, Dr. Reina Akumperegia, and then I'm going to go to Christian Mamhesi shortly. Dr. Reina, when you look at the video, what questions does it raise in your mind?
Thank you. Good afternoon to the fellow panelists. That video that we have all seen, and which is now public in the Ghanaian media, it's a very disturbing one. It is disturbing from the social perspective, because you know this country, whether we are conservative or not, this is a country that holds certain values in terms of morality, and whether or not not going too far, even if you must case, you are casing in the public, from the moral, from the social, from the religious perspective, and also from the legal point of view. And also,
Doc, from the legal point,
it's very disturbing. Yeah.
From the legal point, what has he done wrong exactly?
So I was just looking at the Criminal Code and Other Offences Act, 1960 Act 29 as amended. If you look at sections 103, I think the conduct of the priest who happens to be a lawyer finds expression in those provisions, especially when you look at 103 subsection B. And then it states that, you know, when a person sexually violates the body of another person in a manner not amounting to carnal knowledge. So there's violation here, sexually violation of the body of another person in a manner not amounting to carnal knowledge. Carnal knowledge here just means sex. Okay. So of course, there was no sex, but there was a violation of the body. Now, was it sexual in nature? Yes, a case is sexual in nature. I don't think that there should be any contention whether or not a case is sexual in nature. Now, these cases were not invited, and they were, if you like, forced on those girls. And I agree with the previous comments in regards to the power relations that exist between the priest and these students. Mindful that these students are actually teacher trainees. So to subject future trainers or future educators in a manner that it happened in the presence of their colleagues, it doesn't matter whether their colleagues were clapping or, if you like, in approval of the process or not. So clearly, I think that this is a criminal offense, and I agree with my senior, Nana Oyelita, and that under Section 103 of Act 29, there's a criminal offense there. There's also a criminal offense under the Imposition of Restrictions Act, which was passed in 2020 in response to COVID. Now, you remember that there have been prosecutions already.
Right.
In the Volta region. I think there were 3 cases of prosecution. Each of them were found around 13,000 cities. And if you look at Executive Instrument 164, the Imposition of Restrictions Coronavirus Disease, which was made on the 11th of March of 2020. Now, there are penalties for violating the COVID protocols. Wearing of face masks is one of the COVID protocols. It was evident from what happened on that podium that he compelled the students, because in order that he could kiss them, they had to remove their face masks. So 2 things. Not only was he violating the COVID protocols, he compelled the students to violate the COVID protocol of wearing of masks. That's number 1. Number 2, he violated the COVID protocols in regards to social distancing. Now, if you put that together, so if you read the combined effect of Executive Instrument 164 which was made pursuant to the Imposition of Restrictions Act of 2020, and you read that together with sections 103B of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, Act 29, there are clear criminal grounds for prosecutions, which is why I'm wondering, as open as the matter was, why he's not already in custody and being questioned, and his caution statement taken and bailed so that prosecution can ensue. Right. This is what this matter demands. We need to make an example of this. Right. We have seen the Me Too movement elsewhere in the US, the successful prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein, who eventually had to take his own life, and the ongoing ones. So other jurisdictions have shown the way that no matter how powerful you are, Jeffrey was undoubtedly a very powerful and significant figure in the entertainment industry and in terms of his social stature, but he faced the music. This is what this matter demands. We need to end this.
Thank you.
Girls, women demand and require, they deserve all the respect and dignity. To parade them publicly and forcefully kiss them is despicable. I don't have enough harsh words to describe what happened. And I'm very appalled, and this is very personal. I think it is time for us to start, and prosecution is the minimum punishment that should happen. So he faces prosecutions on the basis of 2 grounds of the law, and I think that has to happen and must happen now.
Thank you, Dr. Akumperegi. Let me just bring in another lawyer on the line, who is Christian Mamhesi. Counsel, do you agree so far with the submissions we are getting, or do you have something contrary?
Yes, thank you very much. My learned friend or friends,
yes,
they have touched on matters of interest, and particularly just as for where he left off, these matters just breaks my mind on 2 main things as far as the Act 29 is concerned. The first one he mentioned is Section 103, particularly 103(2), and also Section 278, which also deals with gross indecency. Now, Section 103(2) deals with indecent assault. Now, from the play of the video, you realize that there were students who voluntarily consented to the kissing. And I think there was one or so who did not give consent and was coerced into the whole enterprise. Now, if you juxtapose that outplay in situation of Section 103, it says that the person commits an indecent assault where, without consent of the other person, one forcefully makes sexual body contact with the other person. And the sexual body contact in interpretation means that any unwanted touching or inappropriate touching, whether by kissing or touching the genitalia of sexes, male or female, and all of that. So, particularly with students who voluntarily consented to. Now, that voluntary consent.
Hesi, you think it was not?
I would have to.
I'm making my submission.
Yeah, let him land, please. Let him land. I just wanted to find out. You're saying this was voluntary? You think the students consented?
No. I'm not done. If I.
Please
so
land.
with respect to students who seem to have voluntarily consented themselves to the kissing, it's a matter that the court will deal with should it go before the court. It is a matter that the priest would have to contend himself with in any of his defenses or whatnot. But these are the legal angles that would come up. As a lawyer, if you are making your submission, you are not construed or constricted in one way of the law. You need to think holistically about the matter. And that makes your appreciation in law well seated. It would be uncharitable for me just to look at one propensity of the law. I'm not educating anybody, but you need, that is why the law deals with balance of justice. You need to educate the public, and they will weigh the balance of justice. They will appreciate the submissions you are making, and then proceed from there. Now, so what I'm saying is that what seems to be voluntary kissing from the other side would be a matter that would have to be contended by the priest. On the other hand, the one who seemed to resist, who was eventually coerced into it, sits well, and it's reciprocal. It speaks for itself that she did not consent. So as far as that particular lady is concerned, Section 103 is already in the giving against the priest.
Lawyer Esi, what about the argument of power play in there? Because this is a superior that is approaching you. Don't you think that compels the students to be more, it makes them more docile than they would rather be?
Yes, thank you for that. So when it comes to the issue of what seems to be voluntary kissing, your point that you raised would go to vitiate it. Do you understand? The point you just raised, the power play, the coercion, that seemed to be a voluntary kissing, will now vitiate what was deemed to be voluntary. Do you appreciate it now?
I understand you. I do understand your argument.
No, they are balance of the law, and I'm just trying to let you know, so that if one has a power of position and says that, yeah, I invited the lady, she kissed me, that would be his position. But the position of authority and power, coercing the person to what it seems to be voluntary, will vitiate that proposition of voluntariness. I still don't know whether you are getting the point made.
I understand everyone's point.
Now let me move on to my
second. Yours, I appreciate. Yes. You were making a second point. Right. Unfortunately, Lawyer Hessie's Zoom is frozen, but we're going to keep trying to get him. In the meantime, I was just going to go to Divine Pay, but I see Bashira too seems to not be in agreement with what is being said. So I just want a quick reaction from her before we go to Africa Education Watch. Bash, do you have a reaction to the submission so far?
Well, I think that at a point I was happy that Christian, if I may call you so, yes, switched from voluntary to seems to have. I appreciate that fact, because to say that the students voluntarily consented to the priest doing this, I do not agree, because we are not in the school. We do not know what has been happening in the system of the school. And if the accounts we have been reading online are anything to go by, and the personal reportage that has been made to some of the bloggers in their inboxes is anything to go by, we would notice that this is a man who has been punishing some of the students for almost doing nothing, you know, and one of them has been a victim of his disciplinary action, you know, and this man is asking you to do something. And remember, in sexual harassment, we have two types. One of the type is quid pro quo, which I'm sure the legal gurus on here.
We actually have 3 lawyers, because Nana Oye Bampoado is also a lawyer. Reina is a
Okay,
lawyer,
yes.
and Christian is a
And then
lawyer.
Christian.
Yes. So you
Yes.
are outnumbered. You
So,
and Divine are outnumbered.
so when it comes to quid pro quo, you do something in order to get something. Who knows what is up the sleeve of the man? Who knows how he's been treating students in the school? You know, so when it comes to issues of sexual harassment, there's nothing around voluntary or not voluntary. Because for me, I am a labor specialist. I work with a trade union, and we've been dealing with some of these cases in workplaces where you even have older people who are more independent, you know, who can actually stand up to people to say no. And when it gets to the issues and they are telling you the experiences and what accounted for the fear of even resisting in the beginning, you would be surprised to know that people in their 40s, in their 50s find it difficult to, in the initial stages, resist this. There's nothing voluntary about this. All I see is force, is coercion, is assault, you know, is abuse, is harassment because of fear of the unknown. And once we have the underlying thing about power, that there is always an unequal power relations, which is deep-seated in our system already, and which the man obviously is in a position of power against ordinary students who he is requesting them to do something and they refuse to do it in front of the whole of the student body. You know, what are the implications for that?
Right.
So we should also be looking at that. I don't think there's anything voluntary about this. So I'm happy Christian ended with the seems voluntary, you know, instead of just using the word voluntary.
I'll be back to you in a moment, Bash, but thank you for that. Let me go to Divine Pay, who is from the Africa Education Watch. He's a research fellow over there. Hello, Divine. Are you still on the line?
Yeah, I am.
Fantastic. Now, Divine, as a think tank, you people have been raising some petitions. Do you think educational institutions are becoming an unsafe environment for girls?
All right, thank you, and greetings to co-panelists. Yes, I'll say straight away, because we have seen over the years that we have downplayed or dismissed and even tolerated issues of sexual harassment in our society, and that has snowballed even into our various schools, right from the basic level or to the tertiary level. We are seeing high rates of instances of sexual harassment. And as rightly said, this is an issue of power imbalance. We see a superior power exerting a power over a subject. And I believe that has caused the issues to fester over the years. And we have still also not found a right solution for it. Because clearly, as stated by Nana Oye, there have been some challenges of reporting instances of sexual harassment and abuses. And even there are also instances of issues about prosecution and taking action. That's because authority probably have played it or dismissed it totally. And even the victims have seen it as something that is normal. The reoccurrence of such instances have gradually normalized the practice of sexual harassment in our schools. And so if you see the video, for me, you see that even those cheering up probably did not see anything strange about it in terms of seeing it as sexual abuse or sexual harassment. Probably what was even included for them is about a case that a reverend father is doing that. So they may be doing that on the issue of moral ground and not even on an instance of sexual harassment. So it even tells about the lack of awareness about instances of sexual harassment policies in our school. Nana Oyeleka indicated that probably we don't seem to have proper regulations in our schools. That's why, and also no proper regulations for addressing those things. But I beg to differ. I know that, for instance, GTEC, that's Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, has the sexual harassment policy and guideline for all tertiary institutions and colleges of education. And in colleges of education, they are also
since you're mentioning GTEC, why haven't we heard from them yet? In fact, we did reach out to GTEC before we came on air, and they, you know, they did not give us any substantive comment. The main thing they said was that they hadn't even received, you have raised a few petitions. They said they hadn't received the petition yet, and they would respond when they get that. Why haven't we had a response from their side? Don't you think it's running late?
They have actually acknowledged our petition. We received acknowledgement from them. So we understand they also be having their investigation because it's very important. You know, the colleges of education, they have gender committee that is to address these issues. The policy, the sexual harassment policy in the school has created what we call the gender committee that's to address these issues. And while they are also doing that, we believe that there needs to be external investigation, and that should be from the regulator. GTEC in this case, not GS, GTEC is the regulator, and they also need to step in because I believe the powers of the gender committee in the school may be limited and may not go full scale to meet out the appropriate punishment that may be deemed to this particular action. So if GTEC comes in, the regulator comes in, they will be able to even take this thing further up because we need to set an example out of this because it has festered. These issues are being in our colleges of education, are being products from the College of Education, and I know how it is. There's center in colleges of education. It's not so much different from senior high school, such that tutors can still punish students. You can still so go and read, go and do this, and do so. Punishment can still. It's not like in university where you can punish students. This issue we are talking about, colleges of education, students can still be punished. So this is where the power imbalance comes in. And while we are talking about the issue of probably whether there's a fraud, I believe that there's a pressure under these students to engage in it. Because if you look at the sexual harassment policy for the colleges of education, it says that it is any act that is unwanted. And the policy explain or further expand the unwanted that a victim may probably engage in an act and it will seem that the person has given his or her consent, but the person may be under pressure. And I feel that the student probably, even those that we seem to be probably willingly engaging in it, may not be under pressure. Because imagine turning your lecturer down or your tutor, your chaplain down in the front of your colleagues. It will carry consequences. Like I said, it could be punished, it could be targeted. And so we may not see the lecturer forcing or the priest forcing, but the student probably within, they could be feel pressured to engage in that particular action. So there's a need for us to understand that in colleges of education, the power imbalance is so high over there, such a lecturer can punish you. So these students could have probably been learning out for some example and may not want to engage in this or disgrace the priest in front of their colleagues. So they also may seem to have willingly given in. So we need to see how best. There are channels in our colleges of education for addressing these issues. It's not that there's no policy. There is a policy. But what I've noticed that there's a lack of awareness about the policy. Imagine, like I said, the students sharing up.
A lack of enforcement. We haven't seen much enforcement of these policies that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's what I'm raising. That look, first of all, it's not even enforcement, the awareness creation among the students before enforcement. The students or the people in that particular community, the school community, need to be aware of the policy before they can launch complaint, before it to be enforced. So if they do not become aware of the provisions of the policy or even the existence of the policy, they may not be able to even launch a complaint before we'll be seeing its implementation. So there's a need for us to create more awareness in our colleges of, and not only that in our tertiary institutions, and even down to the basic level about the existence of sexual harassment policies in school, what their provisions are, and what are the consequences thereof.
Thank
to
you.
do that, I believe the more awareness that the students are, they can stand up for themselves. If they know that if I engage, if I refuse, I decline the invitation of the priest, there are channels that protect me. I'm safe, and nothing can happen to me. My continual assessment may not be targeted or may not be threatened. The student could be able to step up to decline. But if we do not have this instance of awareness creation, like I said, what happened in that instance, the student was just sharing because it's a moral ground. A priest shouldn't be seen doing that. Not necessarily because it is an instance of a legal issue of sexual harassment. So there's the need. We have the gender champions and gender committee in our colleges of education that are to see to this, to create safe space for students to report instances of sexual harassment. There's a need for them to step up to do more work, to create more public awareness, to create in the school, and also educate their lecture, because mostly it's not only the students that are victims, even lecturers can be harassed. So there's a need for more awareness to be raised on this particular provision of the policy. And also, when there's more prosecution, it will send a message that we are no more tolerating instances of sexual harassment. And I just love the way social media and traditional media has reacted to this. It's because and not because they are also reacting on moral grounds, although they are reacting on issue of sexual harassment. It means that we are now raising our voices on this issue. The more we do, it will now make it normalized. It should not be normalized in our society any longer. So the more we add our voices to the call for prosecution, so it's very right for Nana to ask that this issue should be further down, asking that the priest should step aside. If there are legal ramifications, I think we should explore that as well.
I think a lot of the comments are leaning towards enforcement of these policies. Christian, I see, has been trying to say something. Mr. Hesse. Hello, Council.
He's on mute. He has you on mute.
Please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, my network went off. So then I was on the position of the law that says that that deals with gross indecency. Okay. And I was saying that the law has not defined what gross indecency is, but it goes on to prescribe that it is a misdemeanor. Anybody who commits that offense is a misdemeanor. So it weighs us into what we call the common law definition. And the common law definition deals with the fact that any act that a reasonable person will find as shocking, find as disgusting, find as revolting, which deals with anything connoting sexual offense or overtone, could mean that whoever that person is has committed the offense of gross indecency. So in a nutshell, what I have said is that section 1032 deals with the fact that if you touch somebody in an unwanted situation, whether by procured coercion, force, unwillfulness of the person, or where it seems as though it's voluntary, but that voluntariness is vitiated by any means of promise or pressure or undue influence, then that consent will be vitiated. And in contextualizing it in the situation of the priest or the situation unfolding before us, investigations will speak more to it. But the video, if we are to consider it, puts the matter squarely in issues of section 103, and that could probably put the priest liable. But this is not a trial court for us to pronounce all of that. Right. And also, the wide network of gross indecency could also pronounce the probable liability also of the priest. But what I would also urge is I've seen the bundle of the words of pedophile. You know, these are legal term of acts. We just don't use them to describe anybody and other terms. I would also urge on the students, because to commence a criminal action or prosecution, it starts with a complaint. So that process also needs to be ignited for police investigations to come in and for charges and arraigning before court and all of those things. Right. It is just not enough for the school to say they are investigating, but a complaint must be made at the police station by the supposed victims, and that would mean that we are looking at enforcement. But it is not just about the policy and all the good talks, but there must be a palpable steps in order to see the result of this matter.
Right. Dr. Akumperegia, do you agree with this, that someone needs to make a complaint before the issue is actually taken up legally, or we might lose that angle of justice?
Yes, a complaint, but, you know, under the law, where a crime is committed, you don't necessarily have to have a complaint. I mean, if a crime is being committed, would you need a complaint in order that the police, generally the police are law enforcement agency, and they can, I don't think, complaint is not, it's necessary, but it is not it is not an absolute premise before any action can proceed in terms of the criminal realm of it. And I like the fact that the other Christian has tweaked his consent argument to say apparent consent. Okay, and that should settle the matter with the issue of consent. Now, this was a school program. Let me just comment briefly on that. Then I'll come to something that I need to, in terms of whether or not there are civil remedies that may be available to those students. This was a school program. School programs are usually compulsory, not so. So they are asked that there's a program, your chaplain is going to be on the podium, and certain things are going to be happening. I'm not sure that the students would have had foreknowledge that, look, the reason why you have been invited to the podium is to be kissed by the chaplain. I would have my doubts that necessarily preceded their invitation to the podium. If it was a reward of some sort, if it's not a practice of the school, that if you are given a reward, it's in the form of a case, which in itself is problematic, then the students wouldn't have known beforehand that they were in the podium so that they'll be cased. Now, so they had to be on the podium. They were invited by the priest. They had to go. These are all school rules. Until the conduct of the priest then, if you like, brings to fore the criminality and the civil action that can ensue. And I agree with the other issues of the balance of power. You know, usually we've all read on this subject, and sexual predators, they rely on threats. We have seen evidence that he has sanctioned some of the students or relieved some of them of some positions because they had prior to not complied with some directives that he had given. And so there are threats, visible threats. We have also seen coercion and grooming. And because of the trust that is usually placed on someone of that stature in a position of power, it's difficult to argue against consent or to stretch that. But I mean, the conclusions of Christian, I think that is on point. Now, secondly, is there anything available to the student? Can they take civil action against the school, against the priest, or against GS, or whatever it is? Of course, I think that is also an option that they may need to explore. If they have suffered any psychological damage, if they have suffered any sort of emotional stress as a result of this, because this has gone public and it will not be easy. I have read somewhere where the school, or is it the GS, or some authorities said they were going to place them under some psychological support and all of that. We need to also have that kind of clinical assessment to determine whether or not some damage has been caused, and then we can proceed from there.
Right, talking about clinical assessment and psychology, we actually have a clinical psychologist on the line, Nana Yakwashi, so I'm just going to go to him quickly. Sir, when we look at this video that we have been discussing and the actions of the chaplain and these students, do we need, when we talk of clinical or psychological intervention, what exactly should come in place here?
Thank you very much. Looking at this thing, the impact that is going to have on the students is very huge. So sometimes, especially since it has also gone very viral, and the parents of such students or everybody is supposed to be brought on board. I think this is not the first time we are hearing these things. And as a matter of fact, the counseling section of the various secondary schools are supposed to do their work most of the time. Sometimes the fear that some of these people, or let's say the sexual predators, put across within the students, as we all heard or read, that some of the students have been sanctioned because they are not doing his burden and all these things. So we have to do the clinical assessment very well to be able to know. Probably not only these 3 students are involved. A lot of them are involved that probably are scared to come forward to be able to talk about whatever that is ongoing. I also read on Zion Phyllis's post about some of the students even sending him private messages about whatever that he has done to them. So it means that these students are harboring all these things, and it makes it very difficult for them to even concentrate. So for them to be able to get a proper future, a better learning environment, we have to, even as much as we can, counsel almost the whole school. As a matter of fact, anybody who attends such a school will be on in a different level whenever they meet their colleagues as to whatever that is even happening in the school. So we really have to sit these students down, talk to them, analyze the situation very critically, and assess them to be able to know. So this is supposed to be, let's say, one-on-one basis for every student, if the time could permit, so that they are able to voice out whatever that they have, so that it doesn't become too stressful for their learning and their future. Because apart from even coming on the podium to go through all these things, it makes it very difficult. And it brings about a lot of suicidal ideation. So that is why sometimes you hear that secondary school girls, or let's say students in general, are committing suicide, all these because some of them cannot voice this thing out. And as a matter of fact, they are secondary school kids, and then most of them, majority of them are below even the normal age, whereby they're supposed to go through these things.
No,
They mean that
we
they
know
are
that
not given choices.
The school is starting some counseling for these three girls in question.
That is what they need. Apart from
right.
the
Should there be an external intervention also?
If they need an external intervention, because we also have to even know the kind of counselors that the school is even going to employ. Because I read on the Anglican platform that that is not what they are supposed to do. And if in case the Anglican fraternity employs the counselors rather to do the job, I think it will be a little bit ineffective. But if we have external counselors rather to assess them properly, to talk to them properly, I think that one will go a long way to be able to help these students that are involved, as well as the whole school in general.
Thank you so much, Nana Akwashi, who's a clinical psychologist. And thank you to our other guests, Bashira Tukama, Muslim, a gender advocate, Dr. Reina Akumperegia, he's a private legal practitioner, also Divine Pay, a research fellow at the Africa Education Watch, Christian Mamhesi, also a private legal practitioner, and earlier we had Nana Oyebampo Ado, former gender minister and the NDC. We lost her along the line. We would have had more submissions from her. So thank you to you also at home. We hope that you've been able to get some context to this and understand how we can tackle sexual harassment in schools through a multi-stakeholder approach, psychological, legal, from the government angle. We're going to be following this particular case and bringing you updates right here on Spotlight or on the news. Please stay with us. My name is Noang Falong. Thank you for your time. Good evening.
Underarms. You don't usually think about them. You protect them from sweat and odor, but that's not enough. What they need is something that takes care of them, so they feel good whatever you put them through. Introducing Dove Antiperspirant. It goes beyond 48-hour protection, giving you long-lasting dryness and soft, smooth underarms. Dove Antiperspirant cares for your underarm skin like never before.
Opinions are like onions. Everybody has one.
Abortion is a no-no. As a human being, you must take responsibility for all your actions and inactions. Your misjudgment shouldn't be enough grounds to take a life.
No. I disagree with you because look, if you do not legalize it, people will go to quack doctors anyway who might end up not just kill the baby but the mother as well.
Why should I waste my time joining a long queue under the hot sun to vote for a political party, knowing very well that nothing would be achieved at the end of the day?
Something will be achieved. It's your civic responsibility to turn out to vote. Vote and vote for a good leader.
Governments need to cater to every graduate, diversify the economy, invest in other sectors.
But the government cannot do it all. That is why we need the youth to take up the mantle and set up their own businesses. That is how we will create economic viability.
Here on Opposing Views, We take your views, my views, and the views of the experts and put them in the right context for you, our discerning viewers.
The Bible said that we are not of those who shrink back, but of those who believe to the salvation of the soul. You know, sometimes God wants to do things in circumstances and situations that when people see, they will acknowledge that this is not the effort of man, but this must be the finger of God. So to him, life meant Christ. Life meant living for Christ. Life meant serving Christ. Christ in you, the hope of glory.
ICGC Evangel Temple presents The Kingdom Culture with Reverend Eric Ampofo on MX24. This and every Sunday at 3 p.m. Don't miss out.
Black Jersey on the beat.
Can't promise. I said that many soon and you die a swan. Just about him, I will media. I hold my chin with the witty to me swap. Turn a board in, I'm a beer. It cares to mommy song. In lobby care, came me back home. It cares to mama Coco Dawn. They do me against Banco.
You can't chase my life. Ever since she came out, I never felt this way before. Yeah, I'm looking for a boy, daddy. See, baby, I can hold you. I keep your heart, girl. I never let you go. Come on, oh, bye, baby, yeah. Oh, bye, baby, oh. I never think that I could fall in love like this again. Oh, bye, baby, yeah. Oh, baby, oh. Hey, baby, oh.
What else? I'm gonna be bumping it. I can see my shorty from the driveway. Up at me pen, so what can I say? Anything we do it our way. How many times with a kiss? All day. When I jam in the foot back a shize. Me when I me put do a baby. Or coming home from nothing up to the payday. Couldn't do the JJ. See, girl me a one drop kiss. Can you give it to me like this? Yeah, push up and I forget the prices. So we time me hawk on them than the ISIS. No matter what come again and also be a crisis. But the feeling when you wanna do the right thing. Make I put a ring on it and me forget the striking. Big cars, more money, come sugar my thing. Listen to the song I sing, but they be pumping.